Welcome everyone to the 18th episode of Signs, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. My name is Erik Roth, Shamanic astrologer, coming from the lineage of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School and Daniel Giamario, and expanding my horizons into making videos more and doing more exploration with astrology in general. This is going to review the May 2021 astrological insights and timings. So we're going down through the month, and there's definitely some big things happening in the month of May. And I'd like to just announce that I am planning to do more what we call evergreen videos that could be played at any time in the future. I've been a little under the weather, so I haven't been able to put some attention into that, but we'll have plans to do that more in the future. I have a first video already, an evergreen video that is available called Zodiac Clarity. It's a short video that goes over what is a zodiac and the Western zodiac in particular, and why signs and constellations are different. And I have also some references in that video and in the description to look at as well for more resources for yourself. All right, so let's go into May, and we'd like to start off by acknowledging and invoking the stars, planets, and all our relations and creations, and to be grateful for this breath of creation, this opportunity to be part of it, and to be feeling as part of all of this creation itself, great mystery, all the elements, and all the planets and stars. So it's a certain love for them and for their wisdom and guidance and knowledge that we are here on this planet to experience and to work with in millions of different ways. Okay, into the highlights. We're going to be reviewing the full and new moons, which include a total lunar eclipse towards the end of the month of May. Venus rises in the evening sky. There's a Jupiter in Pisces moment here. So Jupiter, after spending all of 2020 in the sign of Capricorn, it raced through Aquarius and is about to enter Pisces, or as of the recording of this video, in a few weeks. And then also we have Saturn stationing retrograde. And there's a few other bits I'm going to talk about during this video. Okay, so here is some a wider picture of the month of May. There are things that are taking place, including lunar occultations, one of a star Nunki on May 1st in the constellation of the Archer. This is happening just about every month in 2021. I don't have a full list of how long this series lasts, but typically it can go a year or even sometimes a few years. And then it rotates to other stars and sometimes concurrently with other major stars. Nunki is a star that sits in the Archer, where the elbow and the vein of the arrow are being pulled back and aim, for the full aim of the arrow itself in that constellation. And there's also a moon occultation of Venus, not visible, so it's in the sign of Gemini at 443 Gemini. So it's right near Pleiades. So it's something to mark on May 12th. Again, it's not something that is entirely visible. And then we have a cross quarter point with the sun reaching 15 degrees, and I'll share what that's about. And then, of course, Mercury stationing retrograde at 2443 in Gemini. A lot of action in Gemini for obvious reasons, especially around the inner planets. They don't drift too far from the sun, and from Earth's perspective, and so they stay relatively glued either one or two signs over for Mercury and Venus. So we have a lot of things taking place, and we're going to move forward here. Okay, so Venus rising in the evening sky. Why this is important is that Venus is ending the underworld phase. In shamanic astrology, we call it the underworld phase, where she's been there for about 2.5 months. And May 3rd, at 23 degrees 48 minutes Taurus, she becomes first visible as an evening star in the just after sunset. So she's been under there, or Venus has been under there since February, and now Venus is starting to come up and catch up to Earth, and which will take some months to do over the rest of 2021 before it dips between the Sun and Earth at the end of this year. So this marks, again, the evening star phase. It's like in shamanic astrology, we look at the experiential cycle, or the synodic cycle of Venus, and how it connects to our relationship with the planet and how we view it from a geocentric perspective. And so this is that ascension point of Venus as it rises higher and higher in the sky, and in the evening sky it starts to become brighter and brighter, having gone through death and rebirth. So she's reawakened and is regaining her powers, or her vestments. And this follows the story of Inanna from ancient Mesopotamia, who was the precursor to the Greek goddess Aphrodite and Roman goddess Venus, of course. And of course there was Isis in Egypt. All right, so after sunset on May 3rd, here is what the sky would look like if you have a clear view. You can see Venus there, and you also see Mercury with Pleiades. So we can see Venus is not far from Pleiades and the Bull constellation here. It's rising up, and each and every day it's going to get a little higher and a little higher in the sky after sunset, and eventually catch up to Mercury here, this blue dot here. So this is, the connection to the feminine and Taurus, something I shared about a lot more in the previous video, but it's definitely connected to the middle of spring, to the essence of the flowering, to the pleasure center, to the comforts of life, to receiving those comforts and pleasures from Earth, and savoring them for all that they are worth, without going overboard on that, but just being in that space of appreciating and honoring that pleasure. All right, so on May 5th. I don't have it listed, actually the date listed, interesting. I've got it listed on the highlights before, but May 5th is the actual cross quarter. The traditional Beltane is celebrated on May 1st, but astrological Beltane is May 5th. And this is only, it can change, to May 6th, it can be to May 4th. It all depends on the year and when the sun actually reaches 15 degrees of Taurus. And there are 4 cross-quarter points, and these cross-quarter points are the inspiration for those holidays. So we've got Beltane, we have Samhain, which is definitely connected to Halloween, or Day of the Dead. There's a lot of celebration around that, and then there's Candlemas and the holiday that's at midsummer, or calendarically speaking, midsummer, in the early August period. And so those 4 mark the periods right between the solstices and the equinoxes. So that's why they're called the cross quarters. So they're crossed between the 2 quarter points in the annual seasonal passage of the sun across the sky that we see. And Earth's obviously, from a heliocentric perspective, the Earth's orbit of the sun and its annual tilt back and forth, going from north to south, and that's why the sun has a tendency to be really high in the sky in the summertime here in the northern hemisphere, and really low in the wintertime in the northern hemisphere, and then of course opposite that in the southern hemisphere. And Beltane is a holiday that is really powerfully celebrating the essence of spring and really connects into Taurus really magically. And the story of the Oak King and the Maypole, and many other traditions that come out of that particular day. And so this is something to really connect in. It's the life really burgeoning out at the seams, and kind of that, one could even say the real beginnings of, especially in certain areas of the globe, the real beginnings of summer, and that flourishing and flowering of life itself. So this is where this 15 degrees of Taurus takes place, and you can see here by May 5th, Venus has already moved a little bit farther along the lines. Mercury is now moved beyond Pleiades and near Aldebaran. So we can see that it's at the end of the Ram constellation and above Cetus, the whale, and the fish is on the right side with the bull on the left side. Now, there was, thousands of years ago, this was a point that was marked in a different constellation, and due to precession, it's slowly moving toward the right-hand side of the screen. So it's precessing, it's going to the previous zodiacal constellation. So a few thousand years ago, it was in the bull constellation. And so it really was magnified by what the bull represented. And, this is the drifting of that space. And so now it's kind of in the space where it's just entering the Ram. So the Ram becomes part of this cross quarter point here. All right, so a new moon takes place on May 11th, 2021, and new moon symbolize new beginnings, or a starting place from which to build or seed a future. The next new moon in June is actually a total solar, it's annular solar eclipse. I'll look back at but there is a solar eclipse taking place next month, just 2 weeks after the lunar eclipse that takes place. So in this case, though, in the annual new moon in Taurus, this one takes place about 10 degrees away from Uranus. So Uranus is nearby, but still having influence in the intent of this new moon. So Uranus represents an unexpected, unpredictable events of great novelty, as well as potential breakthroughs in the world from stagnancy. So there could be some unexpected moments during this time as the moon transits through this area of the sky and activates Taurus, activates the planet Uranus. Taurus's archetype is deeply connected to the aesthetics of pleasure, beauty, and of the earth, and savoring the pleasures and comforts, as I've shared before. Really about receiving that and appreciating, honoring those pleasures and comforts, and it's certainly deeply connected to the Earth's environment. And with Uranus and Taurus, this could continue our passage through a way in to making this planet more livable, and that we would care for it in a much more responsible manner, especially as Saturn is this year continues to square Uranus. So there is that sense of that coming into Uranus, but with unexpected results, with unexpected moments of perhaps breakthroughs here. So Mercury and Gemini. So Mercury on April 27th became visible in the evening skies. I've shown a couple of night sky pictures showing where Mercury was located as it transits through. And so as someone sees Venus in the sky, they may get a glimpse of Mercury. It's a little less bright than Venus. Venus will be much easier to spot than Mercury will be. But you know, if you have a clearer horizon, most people will be able to spot that, especially if you're outside the light pollution of the cities. All right, so Mercury and Gemini. This marks beginning May 3rd. It marks a over 2 month period of time where Mercury spends uh, in Gemini. And the reason it's spending that long is because this is the time where it's coming into a place where it's going to go retrograde and then come between the Earth and the Sun. So this is a period where, you know, on May 29th, we have the retrograde period of Mercury, and Mercury represents the mind, communication, perception, method of thinking. Gemini is the sign that has most resonated with it in shamanic astrology, though some traditional astrologers have looked at that and connected it also to Virgo as well. Gemini is an archetype of the trickster, joker, Peter Pan, Cocopelli. It is about living in the playground of the imagination and brilliance of the mind and how it communicates with the world around us. So Gemini is this kind of the explosion of imagination, cerebral prowess, and brilliance. And it's not about so much about purpose, except as a contrarian and to dive into all kinds of knowledge and to pull from that knowledge and to make up the rules as it goes along. It really is in that powerful mental space. And with Mercury and Gemini, being in Gemini for a couple of months, this really speaks to, you know, a greater visit into that archetype over the next few months, you know, through all the way until July 11th, when it finally moves into the sign of Cancer. The retrograde circuit will end on June 22nd, so just after the June solstice, and then it will station direct, beginning its synodic cycle. In shamanic astrology, we begin Mercury synodic cycles when Mercury stations direct, and the sign that it's in sets the tone for the entire cycle. And another thing about this is that in Venus's case as well, Venus is actually going to be also moving into Gemini later. And this is something that Venus is also deeply connected to, because she first rose as a morning star in the sign of Gemini back in June of 2020. And I think I have a slide for that. If I don't, then this is my entry into that right here. So Gemini becomes of greater importance as Mercury transits through it, and this could create some greater opportunities for creative output and expressions in the world, and also social and communication breakthroughs, perhaps around certain kinds of ideas and technologies around the areas of maybe communication and art, in combination with Taurus. So we may be able to have a greater emphasis of creating during this time period. Here's the Venus in Gemini. Yes, okay. So this is something that I wanted to share about here, because this is the time where Venus, as it moves in on May 8th, after it finished up with Taurus, it's going to be joining Gemini 5 days after Mercury enters the sign of Gemini. So back in 2020, June 10th, 2020, when it last rose as a morning star, that started a 584-day period, or 19-month period, where Gemini set the overtone. So this is Venus's first visit into this sign since that period of time when it rose heliacally. meaning that likely is in relationship to the sun in the morning sky. So it has that, and that usually is about as a rule of thumb, about 10 degrees from the sun. And the same thing with the evening sky. It's 10 degrees, so that some may be able to see it at 8 or 9 degrees from the sun because Venus is pretty bright. But we use the 10-degree orb as a greater understanding that that's usually when a person can see Venus with the naked eye. Venus also squares Neptune, along with Mercury squaring Neptune at the end of May, May 22nd and May 27th. So they're going to be really in the zone with Neptune. So this could create a period where we think one thing happens, but instead a contrary event takes place. It's about using our creative mind and wit to manifest what we want. And I like the image of dancing in the arena of the flute player without any pre-planned composition. But at the same time, this could create, where not only is there no limits, but there is a certain level of maybe even illusion or dissolving agent that takes place within that zone. So it could be a pretty remarkable time in that regard. And if you're feeling as if that is creating some challenge to get clarity, this is essentially especially the last 2 weeks of May. That could be why, as Venus and Mercury square Neptune and kind of stay within that zone for a few weeks as they transition into for Venus transitioning into Cancer in June, and then Mercury not until July. So there we have with the Mercury and Venus transits here. All right, so Jupiter and Pisces, this is really big. This is the first time since 2010 since Jupiter will enter the sign of Pisces. It is the largest planet. It is the one that symbolizes expansion, a vision quest path or path of enlightenment. It's in ancient Western astrology, it was before, obviously long before the discovery of Neptune, so it was also associated with not only Sagittarius but with Pisces as well. So this is in some astrologers will look at this as Jupiter moving into one of its natural homes in the sign of Pisces, and because Pisces is definitely strongly connected to spiritual vision and merging with spirit, merging with creation itself, sort of a ecstasy around having spiritual or ecstatic experiences through spiritual envisioning or meditation or journeying or whatever it might be, is connecting into that realm. So Jupiter itself, again, represents one's vision quest path. Jupiter is going to be in this sign of Pisces for about 2.5 months, as it will retrograde back into Aquarius on July 28th. So it's only a short visit before 2022, when it spends a great number of months in the sign of Pisces. Although in that sign, it actually next year it actually races through Pisces like it does Aquarius, and gets into Aries also in 2022, in the early degrees of Aries. So I'm probably going to be doing a separate video just Jupiter and Pisces and what that represents. But this little slide here, what I'll say is that it gives us a preview of more opportunities for transpersonal or ecstatic states of being, but also perhaps greater heart cognition of empathy and compassion. So a greater wellspring could come through in how we treat each other, how we connect to each other, how we feel into that, as well as Earth, and maybe even expansion of our own spiritual journey. So this process here is in that early degrees of Pisces, and actually um, in June it gets relatively close to the star, at least longitudinally speaking, to the one of the royal stars called Fomalhaut, and that'll be something that I'll talk about in another video here. But that's Pisces and Fomalhaut actually have quite a lot in common, although Fomalhaut has additional qualities that are different from the sign of Pisces. So I'll share with that at a later time. All right, so another one is Saturn station retrograde. This begins on May 23rd at 1331 Aquarius. And it's in conjunction with a relatively, it's not a first magnitude star, but it's a little dimmer star called Dorsum, representing the Goatfish's back. Goatfish is the constellation, and astronomers still call it Capricornus. But it's a figure that is half goat, half sea animal or fish. And then where that star is located is in that transition period, between essentially the land animal and the sea animal. So it's also between earth and water. So this retrograde period, and Saturn stays within this area of the sky for quite a long time, for several weeks. It only moves a full, only 1/2 a degree the entire month, essentially. Since it's pretty stationary, it's pretty static. Stationary meaning it barely moves in the sky. So there is an emphasis in this relationship in the sign of Aquarius, for entering an entirely new frontier for humanity. So this could, collectively, this could create harder decisions that are intended with justice and progression in mind, but an unknown, a transition to something that we may not be fully understanding of until we really get into it. And the seeds that are planted during that time, psychologically, collectively, spiritually, and in the structure of humanity, will bear fruit in the years to come. So, and also to keep in mind in that Uranus is also within 1 degree of an exact square, roughly, by the end of May with Saturn. So this is part of that theme, that continuing theme in 2021 of Uranus square Saturn. And so, be prepared for some unexpected twists and events to the decisions. So this could make May, as I shared about Venus and Mercury earlier, and then Jupiter moving into Pisces, this can make for some things where, in May that are fully not clear. For, there is a sense of I would say more, maybe even more confusion, uncertainty, but also maybe even maybe a greater desire for creative expression and spiritual desire, and certain level of humanitarian efforts and justice out there. So this is something to keep in mind as we move forward through this month of May 2021. So here's the lineup here, and when Saturn stations retrograde, it's visible in the morning sky in the early morning, and if someone stays up really late, past midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, you should be able to begin to see that Goatfish constellation and where Saturn is located rise. And you can see Jupiter way over here in the Water Bearer. Back in December, they were conjunct, Saturn and Jupiter, but now they're separated by, I believe at that point, definitely more than 30 degrees here. Not 30 degrees, I'm sorry, 20 degrees. By more than 20, 25 degrees by that point. And there's the star Dorsum right there at the back. This constellation looks like a giant wedge. And here are up here, Algeti and Prima Gedi, the horns of the goat, and then Dave is that representing the sort of the head or the forehead or the eyes of the goatfish. And so then we have the Shira and Deneb al-Jedi right here at the tail of the goatfish. So it's kind of curled in there in that representation of that wedge-shaped constellation. And again, this is the transition. So you can see the water bear. That's really the first full constellation that's mainly connected to water, and the outstretched arm of well, what astronomers still call Aquarius, but it's not the sign of Aquarius. It's the constellation of that. Okay, so then we have a full moon eclipse in Sagittarius, May 26th. This is a total lunar eclipse. So when we say full moon eclipse, it's a total lunar eclipse. You want half a dozen in the other and 6 in the other hand. Takes place at 5:25 Sagittarius. The sun will be at 5:25 Gemini, and only 5 degrees from the star Antares, which is the heart of the Scorpion. This eclipse will be visible in North America, mainly the western half of it, South America as well, and all of the Pacific Ocean, Australia, New Zealand, and Eastern Asia, including Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan, and so all that territory in there. So it typically total lunar eclipses will typically cover half of the Earth. Typically, so again, and in the partial eclipses, it depends, how partial it is, and or prenumbral. Most people may not be able to see that. So this is lunar eclipses are a portal into the shadow of the Earth, but also an awakening closing at the same time of who we are and what we once were about. So being in the sign of Sagittarius, it offers up what I like to look at this as an image of a lighted torch in the entryway of knowledge, peering into the darkness with hope within the great unknown. So there is a sense of new territory, of maybe even blazing a new trail, but a shadow, a darkness, an unknown, and an uncertainty around that, but also because it's we can see all the sunrises and all the sunsets being essentially reflected upon the moon, which is why it has this reddish brown and sometimes golden hue on the surface of the moon. It's all those sunsets, because the sun is right behind the Earth as it's doing this. And so there's both a promise of a new day and the completion of the day that has passed. So we have both of them happening at the same time and being visible on the surface of the moon. So this is that, symbolically speaking, we can connect into that energy for ourselves. And this is happening just less than a month before the June solstice. So we're in that space now where it's starting to, in the northern hemisphere, longer and longer days. So and with the pandemic raging, this is there's a new territory we're entering into, and I do believe that the mixed results of this, neither good nor bad, it just simply is up and down a lot, will gradually improve over time, especially as we get into summer and fall, and that I believe that the cases will go down, and there will be greater opportunities for exploration and appreciation for what we have as human beings in the world. Okay, this is all I've got for everyone today. I do personal astrology sessions, readings, classes, and events, including astrocartography. And again, this is a material based upon the shamanic astrology paradigm that Daniel Giamario created at shamanicastrology.com. And look for future videos here. And we're heading into the sort of the area where there's going to be some additional insights, especially as we get into June and July, about what the aftermath of all that has happened, and especially 2020, and going into those months and seeing what we've learned so far and what we're making use of that knowledge. So thank you all for being here, and I wish everyone a happy day and week, and to dream well out there. Thank you.